So I've had plenty of side hustles in my life, and I've also worked with a lot of awesome gentlemen and women who have done really well in life and have had side hustles throughout their career. In this video, I'm going to tell you why it's hard to have a long-term side hustle and why eventually you'll need to choose between your job and your side hustle. So at the beginning, let's talk about the two main type of side hustles. There are more, but let's talk about the common ones: services and product. So either you're doing some services as a side hustle. Maybe you're designing something for somebody else, or you're writing some code for somebody else in your free time, or you're building a product. Maybe you built a simple product for educators to teach something, right? Like a very simple tool for people to go and do their online courses. So it's one of these two. Either you're doing services or you're doing products. So let's start with services first. Maybe you're doing some design for a client, and it usually starts with one client, and maybe you're giving 2 hours or 3 hours a week. Now you go from having one client to two clients. Right? You're scaling your services wing. And eventually you'll find out that scaling anymore is nearly impossible because A, you'll need to be full-time, and B, you need to hire more people, which in itself is a full-time job because now you need to pay those people. So you'll realize that scaling services is very difficult. Now assume you just want to stick with one client. You just want to do this side business with one client. The problem is if the client does well, they are going to outgrow you and expect a full-time person in this position. When we work with freelancers, if that piece of the business starts doing well, we commit more resources into it. We try to bring it in-house. So we have never had a situation where a freelancer is working on a project and is doing well, and we continue to work with just that freelancer. We try to either absorb that person in-house or get somebody else in-house because we want control over that process. Now the alternative is that that part of the business doesn't do well, in which case we will eventually shut it down. And most businesses will do that. They will eventually shut it down. So either your side hustle with this company, it sticks for a while and then they shut it down, or it does really well and they'll expect you to work with them full time or get somebody else if you can't. Now assume you're doing product. Now if the product doesn't work out, well then, it's not a long-term side hustle. It just didn't work. But if it starts working, then actually boss, you've struck a gold mine. Because whenever a product works, it's very rare for a product to work, but whenever a product works, you should commit full-time to it and build out distribution. That's the going thought process, right? So you don't want to have discovered gold and then do nothing with it. Ideally, most people at this point will go out and raise capital or quit their jobs and do this full-time because they know what they've built has demand. It's so rare to get that demand in the first place. Why would you just fly it at half-mast? And there's a problem with not completely focusing on products that actually work, which is that competitors will copy you. They will come and they will beat you because they will go into it full-time. A full-time team will always beat a part-time team. A well-capitalized team will generally beat a part-time team. So you don't want to be part-time. Maybe you and another person are doing this. You don't want to be part-time and there are other people who will be full-time, because the goal with full-time is to corner the market, is market dominance. So if it's working, which is rare, you should commit to it full-time. And if it doesn't work, then it's not a long-term side hustle. That's why I believe side hustles are great only for two reasons. A, you're doing it temporarily. You're doing it for some side income for a short period of time. Or B, you're experimenting with something until you quit your job, right? You're doing a side hustle with the intent that one day you shift into this full time. That's why when I see people like 10 side hustles and stuff, I get a little confused. And I'm very sure that very few of those side hustles are doing well. And the ones that are doing well, they're probably full time into it. And as always, right, doing a job and a side hustle together, you're not focusing on either. So neither are you progressing in your job, and your side hustle also is stalling. So that's why I feel like the best spot for a side hustle is either to buy freedom or to experiment with the market and learn about it. Like I told you, there are more forms of side hustle than just services or product. There are multiple types of products. And I think one long-term side hustle that you can actually do is a royalty-based model. For example, we wrote Pajama Profit, but the responsibility of selling Pajama Profit is not on us. It's on Bloomsbury, the publisher of the book, because they've invested in it, right? We've invested zero capital inside the book. So when you don't have to do the sales, when you just have to do the building or the writing or the putting the product together, then it's a lot easier. Then you can actually do it long term. And Bloomsbury royalties have been coming to us for years now, right? So that's the royalty model is probably one of the few models that work on a long-term side hustle, and only because somebody else is completely concerned about sales. A flip side to this, if you want to run a services business or even a product, is maybe it's a side hustle for you, but it's got to be a full-time hustle for whoever's doing the sales. So if you're collaborating with somebody, maybe you're the builder and there's another guy or girl who's the seller, then you guys are working together. You could be part-time and it could be a side hustle for you, But for the seller, it's got to be a full-time bread and butter sort of thing. And that's another way to circumvent the risk of a side hustle ending up temporary. To get a full-time salesperson who's willing to do the effort that you can't because you're focused on a job. That's it for me.